going on, speculators? It's Rod, your futures fanatic. Welcome back to the channel. Hey, I'm really excited about this video. It's another one in my founders interview series. A little bit different this time, not talking to a prop company or prop funding company. Instead, I spoke to a young gentleman. I refer to him as a kid very often. He's the kind of guy that's like makes me like, what did I do with my life? No, great guy named Austin Bouley, and he's the founder of Options Auto Trader. And I've personally been trading options for about 30 years, and it's pretty hard to impress me with any particular tool, especially tools that are very options focused. But what this is not is an option volatility tool or anything to necessarily improve your trading. It's really about automation, but it's not a bot either. Those who follow my channel or are part of my community know I'm not a big favor of bots. You know, if it's for sale, it's probably not going to work. But I am a huge favor of automation. If you have some theory and logic, or you have a strategy that you're testing, and it's for entering options at particular positions, why not automate that process? So that's what you're going to find out about in this entire video. There's timestamps down below. We spoke for about a half hour, really engaging conversation. Again, Austin has a fantastic background. I'll also link to his own channel, which has a lot more subscribers than mine. So again, what am I doing with my life? I should probably post more. Anyway, enjoy this interview. And if you're interested in using the tool for yourself, there will also be a link down below where I am offering, I think, or he's offering about 40% off for your first 3 months. This is really powerful software. Really quickly, this is what it looks like. And what's cool about it, as you'll see, he does a demo during the video. You can set up all of your logic in his platform and then use tools that you're familiar with, like TradingView, to actually be the conditional order to do that. So I know you're just going to dig this conversation. There'll be timestamps down below to all of the key questions and moments in the interview. Again, it's a tool that I use every single day. This is not something that you can do natively on any platform. It's software and a conversation that I know you're going to dig. So let's get into it. Hey there, everybody. It's Rod, your futures fanatic. I'm excited because I'm doing very popular content from the past, which is a founders interview, futures fanatic founders interview. Today, I'm joined by Austin Bouley, who is the founder, young founder, as you can see there, of Options Auto Trader. We're going to talk about the application that he built, a little bit about what problem it's solving. And trust me, I've used this software now for about a month, and it solves major problems. I've been trading futures and options for about 30 years, and this thing is pretty neat. So we're going to jump right into it. Let's start. Normally, I start by asking a little bit about your background and everything, but I want to save that for a little later. So what we're going to do here is just literally jump right in and ask you, what inspired you to create this kind of platform that essentially allows traders to automate their strategies?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thanks for having me here. I've been watching your videos for about a year now, so it's cool to be on here. But anyways, yeah. So this platform allows people to automate their options trading, specifically around futures options. And this is amazing because it's something that hasn't been able to been done before. Like, there's no platform that can do it right now. And so I built this because I mean, as you know, and I'm sure as most of your people know, that like selling options is awesome. Selling options on futures is even more awesome. And so when you can do that in an automated way, it just relieves a lot of the stress and issues. And so I was doing this myself, selling options on futures manually, and was making some good money with it. And then I was in the process of getting married to my now wife, and I was like, thinking about kind of like a morbid thought is, wait, if I die, like this money that I'm making from futures options, like can't continue. And my wife doesn't want to learn it, but it's pretty consistent and pretty awesome. Like, I kind of want her to have the cash flow that it generates. And so I was like, is there a way to automate my futures options trading? And so I was looking around the market, couldn't really find one. And so that was my goal. Can I build a platform that can automate futures options selling? And can it be super simple to use that if my wife ever needs to come in here and manage, turn it off, whatever, she'll be able to do it as a non-trader? And so that's why that kind of started and built the goal of the Options Auto Trader, to make a super simple, easy option selling automation platform. And so that's why I created it, and that's kind of what it does.
I love it. So a little morbid, but inspired, somewhat inspirational.
Yeah, a little
bit. I used to call it the grandmother test when I would look at investing software. Like, could my grandmother, like, at least on the website first, like figure out what the value proposition of something is, and what they would use it for? But that's a great motivation. So, I mean, personally, one of the key features that I've really enjoyed as I've used it is the concept of how, and we'll get into this in more detail, how it's connected to like a brokerage like Tastyworks, and a platform like TradingView, both very, very popular, especially Tastyworks for options and TradingView for charting and analysis and things like that. But what I love is that you've created this thing where I can create like essentially a conditional order that you can't actually. So not only is there automation things, there's features here that you can't really do on the platform itself. Like you couldn't provide this kind of logic. So I was looking if you could maybe like break down how this works and why just that simple conditional order thing is so powerful.
Yeah, so option selling is awesome, but a lot of people know that in the inflow into the market of traders doing options is really increasing. And because of that, there's a lot of systems and algos built to take advantage of options traders. And they do this by looking at the market and looking at, okay, what orders are waiting to be filled, what conditional orders or limit orders are sitting on the market right now. And so they can look at that, move the market in slight fluctuations to trigger your order and get it to execute before it should. And so because of that, that's a big issue. So a lot of options traders, not all, but some want to have stop losses on their trades, and they can't, because if they put in a stop loss, it's going to immediately get filled because someone sees that order out on the market. So now we take all your orders and we kind of keep it on our own server, and it checks and only sends it into the market when it's time to get filled. So because of that, we don't have to worry about being triggered early by market makers and things like that, so that your orders stay safe. And it also, because of that, we're doing everything in our own system in-house. We're able to provide you with different orders that you previously can't on a broker, like trailing stop losses on options, or conditional orders, or things like that. And so that's how it works from the standpoint of orders. And so since we can manage all these orders and we tell it when to send that order into the market for you, we have all these conditions to make that possible. So either you can set up a simple entry rule of like, hey, every Friday I want to enter, or you can even be more advanced, like you mentioned, and connect it to your trading view and be like, hey, when this stock gets to this level at this time, I want to sell an at the money option, or I want to sell 20 delta or something like that. And you can do that in a systemized way. So now you're connecting basically your charts with your broker, and it connects it seamlessly and safely. And basically you almost get instant fills when you're trading that way without having to go back and forth the manual way. And so, yeah, it's just a game changer because it allows you to automate your trading. It makes it super safe, and, you know, it just protects you and has those extra, just that extra level of safety, because your orders aren't sitting out on the market to easily be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to get into some examples, but this is so powerful because not only, as Austin mentioned, you have all the logic that exists in his software, but you can also then tie this to your charts as well using webhooks and things that we'll get into. So you can use indicators or your own strategy for logic to enter. It's really quite powerful. So let's actually get into some examples. Maybe take a quick look at the software. So my audience is futures trading, and I couldn't believe when you first contacted me that you said that the vast majority of people, including yourself, are trading options on futures, because I can't find any options on futures. Most people trade stock options. And by the way, this software works for any underlying instrument, right, that has options on it. Mm-hmm. But since we're the Futures Fanatic channel, I'm creating more content on options. Maybe can you go through like an example of how someone might set up a very, very simple strategy using your software and your app, and then how that might also connect back into TradingView? Or we can just start with like a simple demo to start.
Yeah, of course. Let's dive in.
Okay, cool.
Let me share my screen.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my entire window so that I can jump back in between this and TradingView.
Okay, awesome. And then let me all right, well, we'll stick this way. We'll have both of us on the screen there.
All right, so yeah, so it's super simple to do. So just for this example, let's say that I want to sell a put when ES gets above its moving average. Again, this is just a very simple example, but again, we can dive into more specific stuff later. So first thing we need to do is we need to tell our system, or the options auto trader system, what we want it to do when an alert is triggered. So what type of strategy and what type of system. So we simply click create an auto trader, which is like our bot. We can pick almost any type of strategy we want to do. Again, you can do puts, credit spreads, ratios, flies, all that stuff, but we'll just keep it simple and do put selling. So again, we support futures like you mentioned, but also all other assets as well. Let's just do, I guess we'll just do ES for this example. Let's say we want to do an ES, and I guess we can just do, I don't know, a 45 DTE, 10 delta. I guess we'll just keep these for the example. So 45 days out, we'll sell a put at the 10 delta level. And again, we'll just move on with that. Next, we can tell it, like, let's say we want this to be a weekly trade. We can set that up. But for this example, we're going to be connecting it into some charts so that we can do more advanced things. So I'm going to enable the TradingView webhook. Next, now that I kind of said, hey, this is the strategy that I want to trade, now I need to tell it, okay, once it's in a trade, how do I want my trades to be managed? Okay, what are my exit conditions? And so again, I'll just do a typical 50% take profit, manage at 21 days. Again, you can set this up however you'd like with stop losses, trailing stop losses, whatever. I'm just going to keep it simple for this example. Next, I'm going to tell it how much money I want to trade with so that I'm not exceeding a certain buying power limit, so that I can kind of keep my buying power in check. And so again, I'll just do 10,000 for this example since it is ES and it's a put, so it will require a bit more money. And just like that, I can kind of see what's going to go on here. Approximately, it's going to take me $6,000 of buying power per trade. I'm going to make about $450 per trade, and it looks like my risk is going to be about $1,200. So I can kind of see these numbers. Again, these are my approximate metrics. Again, and I can save this auto trader and set it live. Now, because I said I want to connect it to TradingView or a webhook, I get this extra little finish line here. And so it gives me this webhook URL. So I'm just going to click this to copy it. And this is where I can connect my logic from, hey, I want to sell puts at this level, and I want this to be triggered when something happens in TradingView. So I'm going to go to TradingView. Let's say, I'm going to trigger it. Let's just go to, again, we can do this on any time frame, any basis we want to do. So let's just do a simple moving average for this example. So right here, you can see I add a simple moving average. I can change the settings to whatever I want. Let's make it a bit wider, make it like 50. Now you can see here it smooths out a bit. And now we can simply set an alert on this. So let's say when the ES or when the S&P 500 price, just the asset itself, crosses above, so let's say crosses up, which is, crosses above the simple moving average line, then we want to trigger our short put to enter. And so what we do from there is we just go to this webhook URL, we paste the one that it gave us, and we click create. Now, this means that whenever ES comes up from the bottom side and crosses up above it, this will trigger an alert, send it to the system, and the system will be like, okay, cool. Austin wants to put on as we set up, a 45 DTE 10 delta put. So it's going to go to your broker. It's going to search for that exact strike price based on the 10 delta. It's going to fill it at with limit orders to keep you safe. And just like that, in a matter of a minute from this alert triggering, you'll also enter a trade in your broker based on the exact rules that you set up. And then once that trade is live, then it'll also continue to manage it based on the rules that you have set up. So that's how simple it is.
So cool. So lots to unpack there. So let's tackle a few things. So the first thing is you mentioned broker, and we're talking about futures in this case. So for unless something's changed right now, the broker where you can trade futures options using your software is Tastyworks. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we support tastytrade at this time. I am almost finished with the approval for TradeStation and Charles Schwab. So those will be coming hopefully in the next month or two. But yeah, right now it would be tastytrade.
Okay. But if they're trading stock options, there are a few other current offerings like Tradier and some others, right?
Tradier and E Trade, yes.
Tradier and E Trade for stock options. So keep that in mind. If you're loyal to the Futures Fanatic, there's just one to futures and the Futures Fanatic. There's currently Tasty Trade and more coming. Wow. So there was a whole lot going on there. I guess the question that happens a lot is, you're mentioning some of the logic, but there's a lot of people, including myself initially before I was using this, that was a little skeptical to know how the strategies would handle or your bot would handle the liquidity challenge to make sure that traders do get the best execution, especially if you're selling like 10 deltas or something like that. Can you go into that in a little detail, like how you handled that and how you tackled that from a logic perspective?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, liquidity is super important. Options are still a two-sided marketplace, which means for every buyer there needs to be a seller, and so we don't want to get into a position where there's no liquidity, where we can't get in or out. And so the first thing I do to prevent that from being an issue is I only allow futures options to be traded as like an option you can pick. Like, hey, I want to pick this asset. You can only pick assets that are super liquid and that also have tight bid-ask spread. So the first way I do it is by preventing most of the very low liquid assets. And so that helps a lot. And then also when it comes to that, I make sure to only enter limit orders. I mean, as we know in the options world, if you just put out a market order, you have no idea where you're going to get filled. So I do limit orders. But not only that, the limit order gets updated every single minute. It doesn't get filled. It moves one increment closer to your more advantageous price. So they'll first enter with a limit order at the mid price. Let's say if you're selling a put, that's a credit. So that means it's going to slowly move closer and closer to the bid price every minute. It doesn't get filled. So now you're always using limit orders so that you're not being taken advantage of. You can get in. And then also we kind of restrict you from using illiquid stocks and assets and futures options so that you don't run into that issue in the first place.
I dig it. And that's no small task, what he's just describing. I mean, I have a lot of experience in automated trading. And believe me, one of the biggest challenges, even with more liquid things like stocks and stuff, is trying to optimize around price and order execution after the logic has already been triggered. And I've been testing this for a little over 6 weeks. I wouldn't even have this interview if I wasn't highly impressed. And we'll talk more about that as we get going. Okay, cool. So now let's shift gears a little bit away from it into what I'm sure a lot of people want to know about, which is a little bit of a background on you. I mean, you mentioned a little bit about your motivation for doing this, but what's the story? How did you get started? How did you manage to code this whole thing yourself? And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a wild story. I started programming in high school and found that I really loved it. So that was ninth grade year. Then just kept building things for high school. I was in like a charter school, so I had to do a science fair project. And with that, I was like, you know what, let's do something really weird. And so I took basically the current encryption system that the government used. I combined it with the Enigma machine. If you don't know, was a cryptic code that the Germans used in World War II to kind of decipher some systems. And so I kind of meshed them together, and it made like this new encryption system that was way more advanced than the current government systems. And there was actually somebody from an Ivy League school who was one of my judges. He was the professor, I mean, the dean of engineering there. And they gave me a scholarship. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of stuff I did there with computer science just in high school. Then went on, got my basically degree in it. And then just loved the markets, loved building algorithms and things like that. But I was mainly a swing trader back then. And so I basically built all this research that I was doing into a swing trading software. You can think of Yahoo Finance, but specifically for swing trading and trend following. And so I built that in the middle of COVID, launched it, and it grew to 10,000 daily active members. So it was quite large in its space. And then kind of got rid of that, sold it. And then I was like, you know what? The next thing I wanted to conquer because of that story and just the way that life lined up was to automate options trading, but specifically option selling on futures. And so that's kind of my background in programming and stuff.
Wow, that's just wild. So so did you end up selling the logic associated with this encryption, or
yeah, I should have.
Maybe you should be on one of the crypto teams somewhere or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I did that in 11th grade and didn't think about anything like that. But I mean, it's not the exact same system, but I actually just saw a news article the other week that someone was starting to do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have sold it. But that's the entrepreneur in me now, I guess.
Wow. So you have a computer science background. We used to always joke that you could teach trading to a developer, but you can't teach coding to a trader. So I mean, you have the right combination
Yeah,
of
I've that
factors.
lucky
Although
skill. Yeah,
now we have AI, so I don't
who
know
knows?
what any skill sets are going to be useful in the future. Um, but so we understand the computer science background. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you're balancing all of the entrepreneurial challenges. I can see the whiteboard behind you. We all have to have that whiteboard. But you're talking about coding and product development and marketing and also working on the platform. So how are you finding juggling all that, and where do you spend most of your time these days?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, I'm a coder, so that means I love product. Like, I just want to build the most superior product I can, one that's easy to use, actually works, and delivers results for people. So 80% of my time is spent on the product and making it better. That being broker integrations, improving any bugs, and just making it faster and better, and just more easy to use, because that's a whole process in itself. Taking someone, especially who doesn't know options, and putting them through it and be like, oh my gosh, I have so much to fix. But just things like that. So I'm definitely working on product. And so I think if I can build the most superior product, then people will just by default talk about it. But also, I spend the other 20% of my time reaching out to amazing people that I like, who I think the software would really serve, like you and your audience, simpler trading, things like that, like those companies. And I'm like, hey, check out this product, giving them free access. And then most, because they see the value in it and love it, and it helps them too, tend to promote it as well. So almost all my time goes into building an amazing product, and then from there, I kind of nudge other people who I think it'd be useful for to promote it as well. And so that's kind of how that works.
I dig it. Hence this video, which, depending on when you're watching it, will probably have something pretty compelling that you can check the description below or stick around till the end, and we'll tell you about how you can get involved and use the software for yourself. Um, Austin's doing all the right things, which is leverage, leverage, leverage. You know, get your face out there, your name out there, and then just build a great product, and then the product speaks for itself. But continuing on that theme, like, where would you put your challenges? Like, what has anything surprised you, or I know this whole thing is pretty new, but what are you finding in terms of building and growing the business thus far?
Yeah, so definitely all my programming stuff, like I've done a lot, but they haven't been anything to this scale, in the sense of like, people have their broker accounts connected to this. And so I'm like, this can't fail. And so the number of redundancies that I have put in place and programmed around the number of tests and things like that is like way above anything I've ever done before. So learning how to like think about, okay, this piece of the software, this solution is solid. Okay, but how could I break this? Like, even though this never breaks, like, how could I break it? And like just putting all these redundancies in place, that if anything were to happen, trades are safe, everything is executing correctly, and things like that. So putting these level of tests and redundancies in place is something new to me. I just never done it to this scale. But also, broker integrations is another thing. Like, you mentioned I am 24, going on 25 years soon, so I am on the younger end. I do feel older, but I'm not that old. And it's so trying to convince a huge, I think they're $1 billion now, multi-$100 million broker companies, that like I can integrate with their software and be safe and secure, is another process as well. So like TradeStation, like I've just passed all their security checks from their infosec team, but man, that took like a month, because they're like, wait, you're doing what? So getting broker integrations has been a challenge as well, but they're now starting to work out, so that's good. But yeah, just very unique challenges that just fit me being younger, and just my first time taking on something this big.
Cool. How about what surprised you the most about? I mean, your user base is growing; they're growing quickly. You have a great community. I've been in Discord. Um, what did you maybe not anticipate in terms of either features or how people would be using it, or there's always something that comes about. Sometimes it's so profound that founders go, "Wow, I literally didn't even think of that when I started this." So, does anything come to mind along those lines?
Um, I mean, It's something that, I mean, this is more recently. Most people use it as I intended, and I say as I intended because I asked a lot of people before I built it, so I had an idea of what most people wanted. But recently, I mean, like I mentioned, there's been a huge influx of people into the software now, and I've been hearing more and more this idea of, hey, so the webhooks are cool to connect it to like TradingView and charts and things like that, but like I want to program my own thing around it. So they want to write their own custom code and use the webhook as the execution part of that in their code. And so basically, I'm having software developers who want to leverage this system to build their own system. And so that's something I didn't think about using because, I'm building a very simple user interface thing, but I'm having these coders come in and like want to do their own custom stuff, which is cool. But it requires a whole nother, like I need to create basically a whole webhooks
Yeah, you're gonna have
type
to
of
come up with a
security,
full documented API or SDK
basically.
or something. Yeah, wow. No, well, the
I mean,
coders are the ones that
that
are
is
coming
not
after
the
you.
priority right now, but in the future, yes, I want to come out with that.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of that, I mean, where do you see the software heading next? Like we talked about some of the brokers that are coming online, but are there some like new features or additional integrations or anything? And again, I want to point out this stuff already does a whole lot of things. You got to try it out for yourself. I mean, a lot of stuff, and this is from a guy who's been in front of these screens for 30 years. But tell us maybe what's on tap or what you're excited about talking about in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, integrations, as I've mentioned before, Charles Schwab had a big issue when they bought TD Ameritrade, and then they were trying to migrate them into their systems, and they've been offline for all new integrations for almost a year now. They finally opened that up last Friday. So I'm super excited to start getting into that because I think Charles Schwab, the Thinkorswim platform, will be a huge integration because so many people use them. I'm so excited for that. So again, my priorities are brokers and then strategy. So you see that we support almost all strategies, but there's still some we don't because they're very complex and not being like butterfly spreads. I know a lot of people use them and I want to be able to support them. So supporting basically every option strategy you could ever do is my next priority. And then after that, moving on to webhooks, mainly because I mean, most people haven't seen the whole system, but it can almost do anything you want as of right now. And so really it's all just making it more easy to use because again, we have specific timing entries, exits, all that stuff. And so, yeah, really brokers, strategies, and then the webhook improvement is kind of my focus right now.
Great. And then how about just as a trader? Again, we keep focusing young guy, but clearly you were drawn towards the markets and computer science from a young age. What have you kind of learned as a trader, or do you have a favorite options trading strategy? Like how do you use your own software?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I love put selling, obviously put selling on futures because of just the leverage that I get. And now again, not using that in a
Because the
willy-nilly.
markets never go down. That's why,
Of course,
right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
markets never
Yeah.
go down. No, I mean, of course, we'll talk about August.
Yeah.
What was it, August 6th? But yeah, so put selling, and then again, markets do go down, volatility does spike, and things like that will result in huge losses if you don't manage it correctly, obviously. But some ways that I help with that is I trade or I sell puts that are 120 days out. So getting rid of a lot of the Vega risk. I mean, it's still there, but helping get rid of a lot of that risk. And then I'm also closing early. So like a 25% management on that. So my trades are rolling over every 7 to 14 days. And then just holding that trade out until 21 days until they manage is when I close it. So basically very much of a put selling structure. As the market tends to get overextended, like, based on standard deviation levels, I'll put on more like I'll buy a 7 DTE put to help kind of manage some of that, those positions. But yeah, so I'm very much of a put selling person, and I use basically VIX based hedging, which again is all built into the system with one click. Basically, where VIX is, it adjusts the amount of my buying power that I'm using. So at any one time, I can only use 30% of my account's buying power as set up in the auto trader. But if VIX is lower, then it'll actually move my buying power down to like 15 to 20% instead, because when VIX is lower, it has a higher chance of spiking. And so I want more room of safety. And so again, all that's built in. And so I do put selling and kind of try to structure it based on VIX like that.
I think you had kind of added that recently because of recent events, right? Or not? Isn't that a reaction to seeing a pretty crazy day, which we saw about a month and a half ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I always keep my buying power under 40%. But because I have access to the software and I've seen what people do, like they have no shame in over leveraging these accounts.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, we need to put something in place. And so then I added the VIX based hedging, or I should say sizing. And so I put that in there so that people would like hopefully use it and not use as much buying power during those risky times.
You got to provide all this, and then you got to put
some safety on it.
What do they call? Yeah, safeties. But what do they call? I was a camp counselor eons and eons ago, and they put me in charge of the ATVs, and then somehow they gave me like 8-year-old kids that shouldn't ride an ATV anyway,
Awesome.
and we had to crimp the fuel lines so much that they would almost stall, like they could barely move. And I'm like, something about this doesn't make sense. We're putting an 8-year-old on this vehicle they shouldn't be on, but since we're going to do that, we have to crimp the fuel lines.
Yeah, there's so many things I've had to do, like
to save people from themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like when you're setting up how much money you want to put into a bot, like allow a bot to use, if like one trade will exceed 5% of the overall account, there's like a thing like, hey, one trade will exceed over 5% of your account. Are you sure you want to put it on? I mean, still letting them do it, but just like different things like that to be like, beware, just to help people understand that.
Are you sure? Are you really sure?
Yeah.
Are you really, really sure? Cool. How about so we've covered a lot of ground, right? The whole idea behind the software is to keep it very simple and to allow, look, you have to have some general knowledge of options and how they work in options trading. So there's plenty of resources where you can find that. I'll actually leave some down below. Austin has a great channel as well. I'll leave a link to his channel, and of course a link to the software and how you can get involved and check it all out. But combining all the powerful features that this thing has along with simplicity, if we had to like sum it all up and someone was just sort of hearing about this for the first time, had a basic understanding of options and wanted to start to get into having a little bit more automation, I mean, what's the one thing you'd want to let them know that sets your platform apart, or that makes this something that they should try? Again, we touched on this, which is I can tell the audience, you can't do this generally directly on a trading platform, but I'll let you answer that question, like kind of the one thing you think people should key in on.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, obviously, when someone starts trading, we recommend that they start paper trading, and most of these automation platforms up to now haven't had that option. Like you can't paper trade your bots, and so that's why I made that a feature. So if you're like on the fence, if you're like, okay, this is cool, I see the potential of like being able to automate all my trading, but I want to test it out, make sure I have the rules down, make sure I created the bot right. Well, I created a paper trading system that like anybody can use. You don't have to connect a broker account to use it. And you basically just create the bots exactly as you would in a live account, and you paper trade it, and you can see how it works, how the system handles the orders and everything like that, so that you can fully test it. But if you're looking for more safety and maybe even more consistency in your trading, the options auto trader is hands down the best way you can do that.
Great. And then, we're going to wrap up here, but I'd love to hear like a last piece of advice that you might give to someone when it comes to automating any kind of trading, honestly, because the challenge a lot of the time is where's the ideas? What's the behind the strategy, right? So are there resources? Are there places? I'm teeing it up for also finding out more about the Futures Fanatic and how we're using this particular software and our strategies that are dead simple, and we're using automation. But what advice would you give to someone that's looking to automate their trading in any kind of way, or maybe even considering building like tools of your own? You mentioned there's developers out there that are looking to extend what you've done.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, like if you're trying to automate your own system or build your own trading strategy, I would say the most important part is to make sure that whether you're building the system or you're using a system, is to make sure that it has all the redundancies in place. Because again, I tested this with my own money before bringing it to the market, and there were so many times where like orders would like fail, misfill, things like that, or like there would be a slight pricing error, and so it would throw things off. And so just making sure that you have redundancies in place to manage every potential failure situation that's more if you're building your own tools. Just make sure you have that. But for someone who is just looking to automate their own strategy, I would say that, like, again, as you mentioned, you need to have the background knowledge. You need to make sure you understand what in the world is an option, what's a call, what's a put, and you need to make sure you learn from someone who has a good understanding of it and who has done it, like the Futures Fanatic, right? And so you need to learn from people, take in their strategies, their knowledge, their skills, and kind of just take it in. And I would say if you can back test it, just learn how these things work, trade it with paper, trade it yourself, and then you can slowly, once you do that, turn it into a real strategy. Or you can even leverage, like let's say the Futures Fanatic, he uses this strategy, and now you can start to use it as well.
I love it. So let's end with this, which is the tee up genericist question you can have, the most generic question you can have, which is like your number one piece of overall trading advice. I'll give you mine, and I keep referring to myself as my pseudonym, but I'm Rod, and I'm all about thinking risk first. The only way you stay in this game, everyone wants to talk about how much money or the hit rate of a strategy or the percentages, or they get into the Greeks and all these kinds of things. The most important thing is to always think risk first. If you do that, you can stay in the game till you get to the point to find the right strategy, right approach that ultimately can work for you. What's your one piece of trading advice, Austin?
Yep. So mine is along those lines, but I would say always control your buying power and understand what that does. Because in the stock options world, it's easier because your buying power is more consistent. But in the futures market, you need to be aware that the buying power that you entered with a trade will not be what it is when the market's dropping. And so always understanding the buying power, the effect it has on the account, and how that changes with the trade.
Great. So the mechanics of it all.
Yeah.
All right, this has been great conversation. So again,
Yeah.
I want to encourage everybody to check all the description, all the links that we'll put in the description, where you can find out more about Austin, find out more about the software, find out more about how I beat him up to make sure we have a great deal for people that are watching this video, especially if you're watching it when it first gets published. And I guess we'll leave it there. Austin, thanks so much for joining us here on the Futures Fanatic channel. You've built something super good. I'm looking forward to promoting it, and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. See you, man.
That's great. Okay, well, there you have it. It's a great talk with Austin. And if you want to check out the software, again, the description will be down below. We'll take you to this page right here where he's offering, again, 40% off your first 3 months using code FANATIC. So again, that description will be down below. You can take advantage of that offer. I also saw that I mentioned the lead-in that I was anti-bot, and I just wanted to define that real quickly. Trading bots, I simply mean if you're buying all the theory and logic and entry and trade management and all those things, if it's from somebody else. If it's yours and you're using automated software to create your own bot, then that's fine. I simply just wanted to make that distinguish that, because otherwise I'm going to get a lot of comments about it. Anyway, Options Auto Trader, super cool software. Hope you check it out. Please leave some comments down below, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. You know how to get social with it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.